To those of you finding your way here for the first time, you are likely beginning to realize that the world does not operate the way you were taught. You are starting to see the invisible threads of influence that most people ignore, and you are welcome in this space of clarity. To the returning members of this collective, the ones already refining their sovereign mindset through the daily practice of emotional restraint and psychological precision, your presence here confirms your commitment to a level of self-mastery that others find intimidating. Before we begin, I encourage you to enable your subtitles. The depth of the psychological patterns we are about to deconstruct requires your full cognitive presence, as the most important lessons are often found between the lines of what is being said. The loudest person at your family table is almost always the weakest link in the room. They are the ones frantically filling the silence with anecdotes, complaints, and forced laughter, unaware that their desperate need for attention is a public confession of their own insecurity. While they are busy performing for an audience they think they are leading, there is someone else at the table who is doing something far more dangerous. They are watching. This quiet individual, the one who sips their drink slowly and listens with a terrifyingly calm focus, is the one who actually controls the room. They understand that in any social ecosystem, especially the volatile one of a family, information is the only true currency, and the person who speaks the most is the one who is currently going bankrupt. You have likely felt this person's presence before. Perhaps you have even been unnerved by them, but you have never quite understood the mechanics of their power until now. Imagine the scene, a tableau of domestic ritual that has played out for centuries. The air is thick with the smell of roasted meat and the artificial sweetness of forced cordiality. Around the table, the hierarchy is being fought for with every clink of silverware. There is the patriarch, perhaps, leaning back and booming about his latest achievement, his voice a blunt instrument designed to flatten any opposition. There is the relative who uses gossip like a scalpel, cutting into the reputations of those not present to feel a fleeting sense of superiority. And then, there is the noise, the constant, buzzing hum of people trying to prove they exist, trying to justify their place in the lineage, trying to drown out the uncomfortable truth of their own stagnation. But in the corner of your eye, you see the one who isn't participating in the scramble. They are not hiding, they are positioned. Their silence isn't a lack of something to say, it is a deliberate refusal to give away their position for free. Most people view silence as a void that needs to be filled, a psychological discomfort that triggers an almost primal urge to speak. When a pause lingers too long at the dinner table, the average person feels a rising heat in their chest, a sense of social failure that forces them to blur out something, anything, to bridge the gap. This is the first mistake of the weak mind. They believe that by speaking, they are asserting dominance, but in reality, they are merely reacting to their own anxiety. The quiet person at the table understands that silence is not a vacuum, it is a mirror. When you refuse to speak, you force others to look at themselves. You become a blank canvas upon which they project their own fears, their own need for approval, and their own desperate desire to be understood. By saying nothing, you become the most interesting thing in the room because you were the only thing that cannot be categorized. The quietest person is the only one who is truly gathering data. While the talkers are busy projecting their internal state outward, leaking their biases, their weaknesses, and their hidden resentments with every sentence, the observer is building a psychological map of the entire family. They notice the way the mother's eyes tighten when the father mentions a specific coworker. They see the micro-expression of jealousy on the brother's face when the sister announces a promotion. They hear the tremor in the aunt's voice when she talks about her health. They are collecting the keys to every lock in the room, and they are doing it without spending a single ounce of their own social capital. This is the beginning of control, knowing exactly where the pressure points are located before you ever have to apply force. The loud person thinks they are the protagonist of the evening, but they are actually the entertainment. They are providing the raw material for the quiet person's analysis. Think about the last time you felt the need to over-explain yourself to a family member who was simply looking at you with a neutral, expectant expression. You started with a simple fact, but as the silence stretched, you began to add details you hadn't intended to share. You started justifying your choices, then you started defending your character, and eventually, you were practically pleading for a nod of agreement. In that moment, you weren't in control of the conversation, you were being interrogated by a vacuum. The quiet person didn't have to ask a single question to get you to reveal your deepest insecurities. They simply waited for your own discomfort to do the work for them. This dynamic is where the shift from social participant to psychological architect occurs. Most family members are trapped in a cycle of repetition, playing out roles that were assigned to them decades ago in the nursery. The funny one, the troublemaker, the success. These roles are prisons, and the more these individuals speak, the more they reinforce the bars of their own cells. The quiet person is the only one who has stepped outside the script. By refusing to play their assigned role, they create a glitch in the family matrix. The others don't know how to interact with someone who doesn't provide the expected emotional cues. This uncertainty breeds a specific kind of respect that is indistinguishable from fear. They begin to watch what they say around the quiet person, not because the quiet person is aggressive, but because the quiet person is a witness. And for most people, having a witness to their mediocrity is the most terrifying thing imaginable. The quietest person at the table is practicing a form of internal alchemy. They are taking the chaotic energy of the room, the petty grievances, the competitive storytelling, the underlying tensions, and they are distilling it into a clear understanding of the human condition. They aren't just ignoring the noise, they are using it as a diagnostic tool. They understand that the power the loud person thinks they have is actually just a form of social friction. True power is frictionless. It is the ability to influence a situation without anyone realizing you've even moved. When the quiet person finally does speak, usually late in the evening and with devastating brevity, their words land with the weight of an oracle. Because they have been so parsimonious with their speech, every word they utter is treated as if it were gold. This is the moment where the table shifts. A single, well-timed observation from the quiet person can dismantle an hour of loud posturing. It can resolve a conflict or escalate one, depending on the observer's intent. Because they have spent the evening mapped out everyone's emotional triggers, they know exactly which word will soothe and which word will sting. They are the only ones who aren't exhausted by the end of the night. The talkers are drained from their performance, their throats dry and their minds scattered. The quiet person, however, is fueled. They have spent the evening in a state of high-level focus, their energy preserved and their insights sharpened. They leave the table knowing more about their family than the family knows about themselves. If you are beginning to see the value in this level of restraint, if you recognize that your own past tendency to overshare has been a leak in your power, then you are ready for the next level of this transformation. I want you to acknowledge this shift in your awareness. If you are committed to becoming the architect of your social environment rather than its victim, like this video to signal your intent. Share this with one person who you know is currently exhausting themselves trying to be heard in a room that isn't listening. If you are ready to embrace the discipline of the silent observer, comment the phrase, "The watcher sees all," below. By doing so, you are not just engaging with an algorithm, you are making a psychological pact with yourself to stop giving your power away through unnecessary noise. You are joining a collective of sovereign minds who understand that the most potent weapon in any room is the one that never has to be drawn. The quiet person's control extends far beyond the immediate interaction at the table. It is a long-game strategy. Because they are the only ones who truly remember what was said, and more importantly, what was implied, they become the keepers of the family's secret history. In the weeks and months following a gathering, it is the quiet person who people call when they need the truth about what happened. The others are too blinded by their own biases and their own memories of their performances to be reliable. The observer, however, has the objective recording. This makes them the ultimate arbiter of reality within the family unit. People start to check their own memories against the observer's calm recollection. Was I being too harsh? Did he really say that? The quiet person becomes the lens through which the rest of the family sees themselves. This role as the truth bearer is a position of immense leverage. It allows the quiet person to shape the narrative of the family over time. They don't do this through manipulation in the traditional, clumsy sense, they do it through the selective reinforcement of reality. By choosing which details to highlight and which to let fade into the background, they subtly guide the perceptions of everyone around them. They are like a director who never appears on camera but decides exactly where the lights are pointed and which takes are kept. The family members think they are acting of their own free will, but they are often just reacting to the subtle environmental cues provided by the person who saw everything. Consider the psychological toll on the loud person when they realize they are being observed by someone who isn't reacting. For the ego, A lack of reaction is worse than a negative reaction. If you argue with a loud person, you are validating their importance. You are telling them that their words have enough weight to move you. But if you simply look at them, listen to them, and then offer nothing but a calm, steady gaze, you are stripping them of their armor. You are showing them that their power is a hollow projection that has no effect on you. This creates a vacuum of authority that the loud person will desperately try to fill, often by making even bigger mistakes, revealing even more of their hand, and ultimately exhausting their credibility. The quiet person at the table is also the only one who can truly practice empathy, though it is a cold, clinical form of it. Because they aren't preoccupied with their own defense, they can actually feel the underlying currents of pain and longing that drive the other's behaviors. They see that the uncle's bragging is a shield against a deep sense of professional failure. They see that the mother's micromanaging is a desperate attempt to feel in control of a life that feels like it's slipping away. This understanding doesn't necessarily make the observer kind, in the sentimental sense, but it makes them profoundly effective. They aren't fighting with the people at the table, they are navigating the ghosts that those people are carrying. When you sit at your next family gathering, the temptation to join the fray will be immense. You will feel the old patterns calling to you, the urge to prove you've changed, to show off your successes, or to settle old scores. This is the test of your discipline. Every time you open your mouth to defend your ego, you are shrinking. Every time you swallow a clever retort and choose instead to observe the reaction of the person who would have been its target, you are growing. You are moving from a state of being owned by your family dynamics to a state of owning them. The silence you maintain is a fortress, and every minute you spend inside it, you are gathering the strength that the others are squandering. The true control held by the quietest person is not just over the people at the table, but over the very atmosphere of the room. Have you ever noticed how the energy of a conversation can be derailed by a single person who refuses to laugh at a cruel joke? Or how the tension in a room can be diffused by someone who remains perfectly still while everyone else is pacing? This is the power of the non-reactive center. By being the one person who cannot be moved, you become the point around which everything else must eventually orbit. The others will subconsciously start to calibrate their behavior to your stillness. They will look to you for the correct emotional response, and when you don't provide it, they will begin to question their own. This is the beginning of the transformation. You are no longer just a member of a family, you are a student of human nature using your own life as a laboratory. The table is no longer a place of social obligation, it is a training ground for the soul. The quietest person isn't just winning a social game, they are developing a level of psychological immunity that will serve them in every area of their life. In the boardroom, in the bedroom, and in the heat of conflict, the ability to remain the silent observer is the ultimate competitive advantage. It is the realization that the one who needs the least from the room is the one who ultimately owns it. The consequences of this realization are permanent. Once you see the strings, you can never go back to being a puppet. You will start to see this dynamic everywhere. In your office, in your friend groups, even in the way strangers interact in public. You will see the frantic energy of the many and the heavy, concentrated power of the few. And you will realize that the path to true mastery is not found in the acquisition of more things to say, but in the development of the internal strength to say nothing at all. The quietest person at the table is not waiting for their turn to speak, they are waiting for the world to reveal itself. The realization you are experiencing right now is uncomfortable because it demands a total abandonment of your previous social conditioning. You are starting to understand that every time you spoke to impress, you were actually begging for a seat at a table that doesn't even exist. For the members of this community who have already begun the work, the ones who have spent the last week intentionally choosing silence in moments of high tension, you have already felt the shift in gravity that occurs when you stop providing the emotional labor for everyone else's comfort. You are noticing that when you stop performing, the people around you start to panic, and in that panic, they reveal the jagged edges of their own character. This is not a passive exercise, it is the active dismantling of a false self. Ensure your subtitles are still active, as we are moving from the observation of the room to the surgical deconstruction of the individuals within it, beginning with the most dangerous person at the table, the one who thinks they know you. There is a specific kind of violence in a family's assumptions about who you are. They hold an image of you from 5, 10, or 20 years ago, and they use their words like heavy stones to pin you to that outdated version of yourself. When you sit at that table, you are fighting against a collective psychic pressure to play the hits, to tell the same stories, to exhibit the same flaws, and to react to the same provocations. The loudest people are the enforcers of this stagnation. They need you to be predictable because your predictability makes them feel safe in their own lack of growth. But when you remain quiet, you are committing an act of psychological sabotage. You are refusing to provide the data they need to confirm their outdated map of your soul. This creates a terrifying information gap, and it is in this gap that your true power begins to ferment. Consider the verbal hemorrhage. This is the phenomenon where a person, sensing your lack of reaction, begins to bleed out their internal monologue in a desperate attempt to find a pulse. You have seen this happen. You offer a neutral nod, and suddenly, your brother is telling you about the debt he's hiding from his wife. You maintain a steady, unblinking gaze, and your mother begins to apologize for a slight she committed against you in 2014 that you hadn't even thought about in years. Why do they do this? Because silence feels like a judgment, and the guilty mind cannot help but try to bargain with its judge. By saying nothing, you aren't just listening, you are conducting a silent audit of their integrity. You are letting them talk until they eventually trip over their own lies, and the beauty of it is that you didn't have to set a single trap. They built the cage themselves and walked right into it. This is the cost of being known. Most people are terrified of being ignored, but they should be much more terrified of being understood. When you speak, you are giving away the blueprints to your emotional fortress. You are showing people exactly where your walls are thin and where your gates are poorly guarded. The quietest person understands that total mystery is total protection. If they don't know what you value, they cannot threaten it. If they don't know what you fear, they cannot use it to manipulate you. At the family table, this tactical invisibility allows you to move through the environment like a ghost. You see everything, but you leave no footprint. You are the only person in the room who is truly free, because you are the only one who isn't currently tethered to the expectations of the group. Think about the physical sensation of holding back a comment that is right on the tip of your tongue. It feels like a pressure, a physical heat in the throat. This is the ego's leak. It is the primal urge to be seen, to be right, to be significant. When you succumb to that urge, you are essentially trading your long-term psychological dominance for a 3-second hit of dopamine. You might win the argument about politics or family history, but you have lost the war of influence. The moment you argue, you have descended to the level of the person you were arguing with. You have agreed to play by their rules. But when you hold that heat in your throat, when you let the pressure build and then simply let it dissolve through the power of your own will, you are performing a feat of internal alchemy. You are turning social anxiety into sovereign strength. The table is a hierarchy of needs masquerading as a meal. Everyone there is hungry, but very few are hungry for the food. They are hungry for validation, for closure, for dominance, or for the simple reassurance that they aren't the most broken person in the lineage. The loud person tries to satisfy this hunger by consuming the attention of the room, but attention is like salt water. The more they drink, the thirstier they get. They become bloated with their own self-importance, and yet they remain fundamentally malnourished. The quiet person, however, is the only one who is actually being fed. They are being fed by the reality of the situation. They are observing the truth of human behavior without the distorting lens of their own ego. They are gaining a clarity that the others will never possess because they are too busy shouting at their own reflections. This clarity leads to a sovereign gaze. There is a difference between looking and seeing. Most people at the table are looking for cues on how to behave, how to fit in, or how to attack. The quiet person is seeing the underlying structure of the entire family system. They see the invisible strings of obligation and guilt that keep the others dancing. They see the shadow hierarchy, the fact that while the father might be the one paying for the meal, it is the soft-spoken grandmother who actually dictates the emotional temperature of the room. By identifying these power dynamics from the outside, you gain the ability to influence them with surgical precision. You don't need to shout to change the direction of a family, you only need to know which string to pull and when to let it go. This level of psychological awareness can feel isolating, but it is the isolation of the mountain peak, not the isolation of the prison cell. It is the price of entry for a life of true independence. If you are starting to feel this weight, the weight of seeing the world for what it actually is, then you are ready to formally commit to this path. This community is a sanctuary for those who refuse to be loud and empty. If you are dedicated to cultivating a mind that is as sharp as a blade and as calm as a deep well, I want you to engage with this realization. Subscribe now to strengthen this collective of sovereign minds. Every new member is a reinforcement of the wall we are building against the noise of a chaotic world. Like this video as a mark of your discipline, and comment the phrase, "The silence is the source," to signal that you have moved past the need for external validation. This is your psychological declaration of independence. You are no longer a participant in the family drama, you are its observer and, ultimately, its master. The silence as a source is not just about not speaking, it is about the quality of the presence. There is a heavy silence and a weak silence. Weak silence is the silence of the shy, the intimidated, or the resentful. It is a silence that feels like a cowering. Heavy silence, however, is a silence that occupies space. It is the silence of a person who is so comfortable in their own skin that they feel no need to justify their existence to anyone else. This is the silence that makes the loud people nervous. They can sense that your lack of speech isn't a lack of thought, but a surplus of it. They feel your attention like a physical weight, and they realize that they are being weighed and found wanting. This is where the true, silent command begins to manifest. People will start to look at you before they speak, unconsciously seeking your silent approval. This shift in the room's gravity is subtle but absolute. When you possess this heavy silence, you become the anchor point of the environment. In the middle of a family storm, when voices are rising and old wounds are being torn open, the room will instinctively pivot toward the person who remains unmoved. Your stillness becomes a challenge to their chaos. It forces them to confront the fact that their emotional outbursts are a choice, not a necessity. By remaining the non-reactive center, you are essentially teaching your family how to be around you. You are setting a boundary that doesn't need to be spoken to be understood. You are saying, without words, your drama does not reach me. Your noise does not move me. I am the master of my own internal state. The consequence of this mastery is the death of the ego's narrative. We all have a story we tell ourselves about our family, how they wronged us, how they don't understand us, or how we need to fix them. The quiet person at the table realizes that all of these narratives are just more noise. They are just another way to stay trapped in the cycle. When you truly embrace the role of the observer, you stop caring about being understood. You realize that the version of you that exists in your family's mind is none of your business. It is a ghost, and you are under no obligation to feed it. This realization is the ultimate identity break. You are no longer defined by your bloodline, you are defined by your awareness. As the evening progresses, the information advantage of the quiet person becomes almost overwhelming. You have seen the tiredness of the mask in everyone else. You have seen the moment when the successful brother let his shoulders sag when he thought no one was looking. You have seen the happy mother wipe away a stray tear while clearing the plates. You have seen the alpha father struggle to remember a name, a brief flicker of mortality crossing his face. These are the truths of the flesh, the reality of human frailty that is usually hidden behind a wall of words. Because you have been silent, you are the only one who has seen them. This knowledge is not a weapon to be used for cruelty, but a tool to be used for compassionate control. You know exactly what each person needs, and you know exactly how little they actually have to give. This knowledge creates a profound sense of intellectual restraint. You could destroy them with a single sentence. You could point out the hypocrisy, the failure, and the hidden shame that they have spent the whole night trying to cover up. But you don't, not because you are nice, but because you are disciplined. You understand that a weapon's greatest power is often in the fact that it is never used. By holding back the killer insight, you maintain your superiority. The moment you use your knowledge to hurt them, you have become their equal again. You have entered the fray. But by holding that knowledge in the silence of your own mind, you remain their sovereign. You are the one who knows, and the one who knows is always the one who governs. The tension at the table is now yours to command. You can feel the silent questions hanging in the air. People are wondering what you're thinking, why you're not joining in, and what you know that they don't. This curiosity is a form of psychological hook. They are now mentally following you, even though you haven't moved an inch. They are trying to solve the puzzle of your silence. This is the moment where the transition to transformation begins. You are no longer just surviving the family dinner. You are using it to build a new version of yourself, a version that is immune to the social pressures that govern the masses. You are becoming the architect of the void, the one who creates the space in which everyone else's character is forced to reveal itself. The loud person is now physically exhausted, their social battery drained by the constant need to project an image. They are becoming sloppy. They are repeating themselves. They are looking for an exit, but they don't know how to leave without losing face. You, however, are just getting started. You are in a state of restorative observation. The more you see, the more energized you become. You are witnessing the human comedy in its purest form, and you are the only one with a front row seat who isn't also part of the cast. The meal is ending, the plates are being cleared, but the psychological map you have built is permanent. You are leaving this table with a level of insight that no one else even knows is possible. But the real challenge is not what happens at the table, it is what happens when you leave. The quiet command you have established is a fragile thing if it is only practiced in the presence of others. The true test of your sovereign mindset is whether you can maintain that same level of internal silence when you are alone with your own thoughts. Can you observe your own ego with the same cold, clinical precision that you used on your family? Can you see your own verbal leaks, your own desires for validation, and your own need to be right? The quietest person at the table is not just controlling the room, they are preparing to control themselves. You are likely feeling a strange sensation now, a mixture of clarity and a cold, sharp detachment from the people you have known your entire life. You are beginning to see them not as family members, but as biological machines running outdated software. For the returning masters of this mindset, those of you who have already purged the need for social approval from your nervous system, this detachment is your greatest asset. It is the emotional armor that allows you to operate with surgical precision while others are blinded by their own impulses. This is the moment where we peel back the final layer of the social artifice to reveal the grim philosophical reality underneath. The reason the quietest person controls the table is that they are the only one who has accepted that the table is an illusion. Before we dive into the mechanics of this high-level psychological architecture, I must remind you that this level of insight is a burden as much as it is a power. Once you understand the law of the void, you can never truly be part of the herd again. If you are prepared to carry that weight, ensure your subtitles are active, as the nuance of the architecture of the void requires your absolute mental discipline. The philosophical reveal at the heart of this dynamic is simple and devastating. Most people do not speak to communicate, they speak to escape. They are terrified of the silence because, in the silence, the self-interrogation begins. In the absence of noise, the successful brother has to face the fact that his career is a hollow monument to a father who will never be satisfied. In the absence of gossip, the bitter aunt has to feel the cold reality of her own loneliness. The noise of the dinner table is a collective ritual of distraction, a frantic attempt to keep the demons of self-reflection at bay. When you remain quiet, you are refusing to participate in this mass evasion. You are, in effect, forcing them to remain in the room with themselves. This is why your silence feels like a threat. You are the only one who is awake in a room full of people who are desperate to stay asleep. This is the architecture of the void. In every social interaction, there is a central point of gravity, a void, that everyone is trying to fill with their presence, their stories, and their egos. The weak person tries to fill the void by throwing as much noise into it as possible, hoping that if they talk enough, they will become the center of the universe. The quiet person, however, understands that the void cannot be filled, it can only be occupied. By remaining silent, you become the void itself. You become the space in which everyone else's character is reflected back to them. You don't have to do anything to control the room, you simply have to be the one thing that cannot be consumed by the noise. You are the still point in the turning world, and because you cannot be moved, everyone else must eventually find their place relative to you. As the meal transitions from the heavy main course to the ritual of coffee and dessert, the social exhaustion of the talkers begins to set in. This is a critical psychological window. Their impulse control is lowered. Their masks are slipping. They have run out of their prepared anecdotes and are now forced to improvise, and it is in this improvisation that the deepest truths are revealed. You notice the way the patriarch leans more heavily on his cane, the booming voice now a slightly desperate rasp. You see the way the competition-driven sister checks her phone under the table, her eyes searching for a hit of dopamine from a stranger to replace the fading attention of the room. You are witnessing the entropy of the ego. Everything that was built up in the first hour is now falling apart, and because you haven't spent any of your energy, you are the only one who is still fully operational. This is where the silent command manifests in its most potent form. You haven't said a word, yet people are now subconsciously mimicking your posture. If you lean back, they lean back. If you take a slow, deliberate sip of water, the person next to you will suddenly realize they are thirsty. This is neurobiological synchronization. Because you are the most stable system in the room, the other, more chaotic systems, the nervous, talking egos, are naturally trying to find equilibrium by syncing with you. You are no longer just an observer, you are the biological pacer of the family. You are regulating their heart rates and their anxiety levels simply by existing in a state of high-level composure. You are the director of a play who hasn't even walked onto the stage, yet every actor is looking toward your empty chair for their cues. Think about the profound, intellectual betrayal that occurs when someone realizes you have been seeing them clearly while they have been seeing only a projection. There will be a moment, perhaps when the dessert is being served, when someone catches your eye and really realizes, that you aren't just being quiet. They see the intensity of your focus, the lack of judgment, and the terrifying level of self-possession. In that moment, their world cracks. They realize that while they were trying to entertain you or impress you, you were actually diagnosing them. This realization triggers an instinctive submission response. They will either become intensely deferential, or they will find an excuse to leave your immediate proximity. Either way, you have won. You have established a psychological boundary that no one can cross without your permission. If you are starting to recognize this power within yourself, if you are beginning to understand that your silence is not a lack of contribution but a mastery of influence, then you have transcended the role of the family member. You are now a sovereign entity, observing a social system. This is a lonely path, but it is the only path that leads to true self-mastery. I want you to acknowledge this transition. If you are committed to maintaining this architecture of the void in every area of your life, if you are ready to be the anchor in every storm, then engage with this community of observers. Like this video to affirm your commitment to the discipline of the silent command. Share this with someone who is currently being drowned out by the noise of their own life, someone who needs to know that the exit from the chaos is through the door of silence. Comment the phrase, "The architect of the void," below. This is not for me, it is a psychological marker for you. It is the moment you stop being a passenger in your own social reality and start being its hidden governor. By doing so, you are joining a lineage of individuals who understand that true authority is never granted, it is assumed through the power of observation. The philosophical reveal continues into the nature of truth. In a family, truth is usually just the consensus of the loudest voices. It is a fabricated reality designed to protect the collective ego. But the quietest person knows that the real truth is found in the micro-movements that everyone else misses. It's in the half-second hesitation before a lie is told. It's in the suppressed flinch when an old trauma is mentioned. It's in the artificial warmth of a forced greeting. When you are the one who sees these things, you are the only one who actually knows what is happening in the room. The others are living in a dream world of their own making. You are the only one who is awake in the reality of the situation. This gives you an ontological superiority that cannot be taken away. You possess the original copy of the evening, while everyone else is walking away with a distorted, low-resolution summary. This knowledge advantage creates a permanent shift in the power dynamic. After the dinner is over, after the guests have left and the house is quiet, the memory of your silence will linger longer than the memory of anyone else's words. The talkers will worry about what they said. They will replay their jokes and their arguments, wondering if they went too far or if they sounded foolish. They will be haunted by their own verbal leaks. But they will also be haunted by you. They will wonder what you were thinking. They will wonder why you didn't laugh at that specific moment. They will wonder what you know about them that they haven't even admitted to themselves. Your silence becomes a living presence in their minds, a internalized auditor that they will subconsciously try to please in the future. The quiet person is the only one who can truly practice strategic patience. Because you aren't looking for a quick win or a momentary hit of validation, you can afford to wait. You can let a conflict play out for years, observing the moves and counter moves, until the moment is exactly right for you to intervene with a single, decisive word. This is the difference between a brawler and a grandmaster. The brawler wants to trade blows at the dinner table. The grandmaster has already seen the checkmate 20 moves ahead and is simply waiting for the brawler to exhaust himself. This patience is a form of time distortion. By not reacting to the immediate provocation, you are operating on a different timeline than everyone else. You are playing the long game, while they are trapped in the now. As you sit there, watching the entropy of the evening, you realize that the control you possess is not over them, but over the process of interaction itself. You are the quality control officer of the family culture. By refusing to validate toxic narratives, by refusing to laugh at petty cruelty, and by refusing to join in the mass evasion of truth, you are slowly, almost imperceptibly, raising the standard of the entire system. You are the standard of sanity in a room of functional madness. They might not like it, and they certainly won't thank you for it, but they will be changed by it. They will find it harder to lie, harder to boast, and harder to be small in your presence. This is the true burden of the sovereign mind. You are no longer just responsible for your own behavior, you are responsible for the moral atmosphere of the room. Your silence is a judgment, whether you want it to be or not. It is a refusal to consent to the mediocrity of the group. This is why the quietest person is often the one who is the most respected and the most feared. They are the only ones who haven't sold out. They are the only ones who haven't traded their integrity for a moment of social belonging. They are the unbought soul at the table, and in a world where everyone is for sale, that makes you the most valuable and dangerous person in the room. But the final reveal is even deeper. You aren't just controlling the table for the sake of power, you are doing it to protect your internal sanctuary. Every word you don't say is a brick in the wall of your psychological fortress. By keeping your internal state hidden, you are ensuring that no one can pollute your mind with their drama, their insecurities, or their limitations. You are at the table, but you are not of the table. You are a nomad of the mind, passing through their world without being touched by it. This invulnerability is the ultimate goal of the sovereign mindset. It is the realization that you are the only one who can grant entry to your internal world, and at the family table, you have chosen to keep the gates closed. The quiet command is now absolute. The meal is over. The performers are showing their props and getting ready to go home to their own private exhaustions. But as you stand up to leave, you realize that you aren't leaving the same person you were when you sat down. You have leveled up in the hierarchy of awareness. You have seen the invisible machinery of human nature in action, and you have mastered it through the simple, terrifying power of restraint. The others are leaving with full stomachs and empty minds. You are leaving with a full mind and a full soul, ready to apply these lessons to a world that is much bigger than a dining room table. The transition to the final transformation is almost complete. You are ready to move from observing the control to embodying the command. The meal is finished, the chairs are being pushed back, and the air in the room is finally cooling as the fever of performance breaks. But for you, the work has only just reached its most critical phase. You are now transitioning from the tactical observation of the table to the strategic integration of this power into the very fabric of your existence. To the new viewers who have followed this journey to its conclusion, you are no longer the person who walked into this room. You have been initiated into a way of seeing that makes the ordinary world appear as a series of transparent layers. To the returning members of our sovereign collective, you recognize this feeling, the heavy, quiet weight of a mind that has stopped reacting and started governing, and you know that the true test of your discipline begins the moment you step out of the door. As we move into this final stage of transformation, I urge you once more to ensure your subtitles are enabled. The nuances of the silent command are found in the subtle shifts of internal perspective that will define the rest of your life. As you stand up from the table, you will notice a change in the physical space around you. The people who were shouting, laughing, and competing for dominance an hour ago are now visibly diminished. They are moving slower, their eyes are slightly glazed, and their conversations have become repetitive and thin. They have spent themselves on the altar of social validation. You, however, are moving with a terrifying efficiency. You are not tired because you haven't been fighting. You have been harvesting. You are leaving this environment with a psychological profile of every person in that room, a clear understanding of the family's structural weaknesses, and a refined sense of your own internal fortress. This is the first rule of the silent command. The person who leaves the room with the most energy is the one who was in control the entire time. The goodbye is the final pattern interrupt. Most people use the goodbye to offer one last piece of verbal glue, a promise to call, a recycled joke, or a desperate attempt to smooth over a tension that occurred earlier. They are trying to fix the impression they left. You will do the opposite. You will offer a clean departure, a firm handshake, a steady look in the eye, and a brief, neutral farewell. No over-explaining, no lingering, no emotional leaking. By refusing to participate in the frantic ritual of the long goodbye, you leave behind a vacuum that is far more powerful than any parting words could be. The people you are leaving will spend the next hour, perhaps the next week, dissecting the meaning of your departure. They will wonder if you were bored, if you were judging them, or if you simply have something more important to attend to. By providing no answer, you ensure that their minds remain occupied by your presence long after you have physically vanished. This is the shadow of the observer. When you practice the silent command, you don't just influence people while you were in their presence, you haunt their reflections. Because you were the only one who didn't give yourself away, you are the only one they cannot categorize and therefore dismiss. They have dismissed the loud brother as a blowhard. They have dismissed the gossiping aunt as a nuisance. But they cannot dismiss you, because they don't know what you are. You have become a permanent variable in their psychological landscape. They will find themselves unconsciously editing their behavior in the future, wondering how it would look through your eyes. This is the ultimate form of sovereign influence, governing the actions of others without ever having to issue a single order. As you walk to your car, or step out into the night air, you will feel the temptation to vent. You will want to call a friend or your partner and mock the people you just left. You will want to describe the hypocrisy you saw and the weakness you observed. This is the ego's last stand. It wants to turn your strategic observation back into social gossip. It wants to discharge the tension you've built up. Resist this. If you speak about what you saw, you are burning the data for a momentary hit of superiority. If you keep it inside, if you let it sit in the cold, dark rooms of your own mind, it turns into intuition. It becomes a permanent part of your psychological radar. The silent command is maintained only as long as you are the only one who knows the extent of your knowledge. The transition from the table to the world is where the identity-based transformation truly takes root. You are realizing that the family table was just a microcosm. The same dynamics are playing out in your office, in your negotiations, and in the political theater of the world. Most of humanity is currently sitting at a metaphorical table, shouting over one another, desperate to be seen, and leaking their power with every word. You are now the quiet person in every room you enter. You have developed the watcher's eyes. You see the fear behind the aggression of your boss. You see the insecurity behind the coldness of a romantic partner. You see the desperation in the hustle culture that surrounds you. And because you see it, you are no longer triggered by it. You have moved from reaction to response, and finally, to total self-possession. This level of awareness requires a specific kind of internal hygiene. You must learn to close the files on the people you observe. If you carry their drama and their weaknesses with you as an emotional burden, you are not a sovereign, you are a collector of trash. The quiet master observes, records, and then detaches. You see the uncle's failure not as a reason to judge him, but as a data point on how unexamined pride leads to stagnation. You see the mother's manipulation not as an attack on you, but as a lesson in how fear of loss creates control grids. By depersonalizing the behavior of others, you become unmanipulatable. You are no longer a character in their story, you are the author who is currently writing them out of your internal reality. If you have felt the profound shift in your own internal gravity during this process, if you recognize that you are now moving through the world with a weight and a clarity that others cannot fathom, then you have successfully completed this stage of your training. This is not just about being quiet, it is about being formidable. If you are ready to carry this silent command into the rest of your life, if you are committed to being the anchor in a world of drift, I want you to mark this moment of transformation. Subscribe to this channel to continue refining your sovereign mindset. Every video is a brick in the fortress we are building together. Like this video as a final seal on your discipline of silence. And for the final time, I want you to comment a specific phrase to signal your entry into the void. Comment, "The silence is my command." This is your oath of sovereignty. It is the moment you stop listening to the noise and start listening to the reality. You are now part of a global collective of watchers, individuals who understand that the true history of the world is not written by the loud, but by the quiet, who saw everything. The final transformation is the realization that the quiet person at the table is not playing a role, they have become the role. There is no longer a need to speak, because there is no longer an ego that needs to be defended. You have reached a state of psychological minimalization. You use only the words that are necessary, and not a single syllable more. This economy of expression is the gold standard of power. When you speak, the world stops to listen, not because you are shouting, but because you are the only source of truth in a room full of echoes. You have become a reference point for reality itself. This reference point status is what allows you to control everything. Control is not about telling people what to do, it is about defining the environment in which they choose to act. By being the most composed person in the room, you set the ceiling for the emotional intelligence of that room. People will not rise above your level of stillness, they will fall toward it. You are the thermostat, not the thermometer. You don't reflect the temperature of the family gathering, you dictate it by your refusal to be moved by the heat of others. This is the silent command in its purest, most stoic form. The quiet person also possesses the power of the pivot. Because you haven't committed to any of the petty arguments or emotional sides at the table, you are the only one who can change the direction of the family narrative at any moment. You have saved your moves, while the others have spent their queen and their rooks on meaningless skirmishes. You still have your entire board intact. This makes you infinitely versatile. You can be the peacemaker, the truth teller, or the architect of a new order, and you can do it with a single sentence, because your credibility is absolute. You haven't diluted your authority with filler. As you integrate these lessons, you will find that your relationships begin to change. Some people will be drawn to your new stillness, like moths to a flame. They will find your presence soothing and grounding. Others, particularly those who, reliant on controlling others through drama, will become aggressive or withdraw. This is a necessary pruning. The sovereign mind cannot coexist with emotional parasites. Your silence acts as a filter, removing the noise from your life and leaving only the signal. You are not losing people, you are clearing the space for quality. The final command I leave you with is a command to maintain the void. The world will conspire to make you loud again. It will provoke you with injustice, flattery, and urgency. It will try to seduce you into joining the chorus. You must treat every invitation to speak as a potential trap. Ask yourself, does this word improve upon the silence, or does it merely feed my ego? If it is the latter, kill the word before it reaches your lips. Every time you choose the silence, you are renewing your vow of self-mastery. You are strengthening the command. The evening is over, the lights are going out in the houses of your neighbors, and the noise of the world is muffled by the night. But for you, the clarity is brightening. You are standing in the center of your own life, and for the first time, you are the one holding the reins. The quiet person at the table was just the beginning. The master of the void is who you are now. Do not explain this to anyone. Do not brag about your new insight. Simply live it. Let your results be your voice. Let your composure be your manifesto. The watcher has seen all, and the watcher is now ready to act. If you find yourself craving more clarity, if you feel the need to deepen this state before the world drifts back in, do not let this momentum fade. The sovereign mind is built through immersion, not information. There are other tables we must observe together, other shadows we must illuminate, and other chambers of the fortress we must secure. Your transformation is ongoing. Do not break the silence yet. Stay in this space. Continue the binge watch of awareness by moving directly into the next deconstruction. Your future self is waiting in the next layer of the void. Go there now.